Okay, we're recording now. I just wanted to run over this. So this one, I think you guys got easy, right? Because we're just saying that the natural rate is 4%, right? The natural rate, and the inflation rate is 5%. So all of you knew that the natural rate is where the long run Phillips curve is, right? So you got graph A to start with, right? So you got that. That was easy. So then I ask in the long run, will the short run aggregate supply shift to the left or the right? Well, if you're actually, let's see, what was the situation here? So if we're at a point where we have high unemployment, then in the long run, the wages are going to fall, and you're going to see a shift to the right, right? So you're going to see a shift to the right, which is going to bring employment. So you'll see a shift to the right, not of that. I mean, just hold on a second. Let me just pull one of them up here somewhere. Yeah, you'll see this guy shift to the right. Okay, and you got that, I think. So that's not a hard thing. And almost all of you knew the long run Phillips curve doesn't shift at all on its own. And see the parameters are if no policy, if the long run is by definition isn't going to shift unless something happens that's not that they don't talk about here. Okay. Now, part D, the physical policy. All of you said either raise government spending or increase spending or decrease taxes. You got that right. Now, here's where you guys had a little bit of a problem. Okay. Part E, right? Which graph below? So actually, you didn't have a problem here because it's easy to show that if they're going to increase spending, then you're going to shift the aggregate demand to the right, which is right here. But you got that, which is D, and then F. I'm trying to bump around here. Okay, that's the answer. Sorry. Where is F? Here we go. Based on the change in the real GDP, which graph below illustrates the change in the money supply, in the currency, and that's now what happens is if you have an increase in aggregate demand, that's going to mean that consumers can buy more imports. So this is going to increase the supply. If you think about that, in order for Americans to buy foreign goods, we have to use dollars on the foreign market. So that's going to put more dollars into the foreign currency market, which means we're going to shift the supply of dollars to the right. That's why it's graph E, okay? And then the last one I asked you was, based on your answer in part E and assuming a flexible exchange rate system, things can change, which graph illustrates the change in the value of the dollar? Well, I wasn't trying to give you a question. It's the same graph, right? Because I didn't change anything. So if the supply of a dollar shifts to the right, then the exchange rate, the value of the dollar, goes down. In other words, it takes fewer euros because, see, once again, if the quantity down here is in dollars, dollars are in the denominator here. So the value of this expression, euros over dollars, if it goes down, it means it takes fewer euros to buy a dollar. And that would make that expression lower, because if the denominator goes, if the numerator goes down, which is the euro, the whole expression drop. So it's the same graph, okay? So graph E would have been the right answer for both F and G. And a lot of you, I think, just thought it had to be a different graph, but no, it was the same one, okay? Because both graph E shows both the supply curve shifting to the right and the exchange rate or the value of the dollar relative to the euro dropping or depreciating, okay? Does anybody have any questions on that free response? It was pretty much like the assignment, which is why I'm wondering why some of you got confused on it. I don't know. Anyway, I wanted to make sure that you weren't confused on that. Okay, let's get right into our assignment 9. Now this is going to be important. These are new concepts. So and there's going to be a really good chance that you'll be, that this is going to be on the exam. So the first thing we have to do here is we need to draw a market graph showing that the consumers are going to hold less money because they're going to start using their credit cards more. So if you think about that, if consumers need to have less cash, that means that money demand is going to decrease. So that's the thing we want to start off with thinking about. And so we want to draw that graph, and that's going to look like, if I get to it, that might not be it. That's not it. It's going to look like this right here, okay? Let me just jump you guys up there. And so you're going to want to show the money demand curve shifting to the left because consumers are holding less money. They're using their credit cards, so they're demanding less money, and that's going to mean a drop in the nominal interest rate. Okay, so your explanation is, well, that's your graph. Okay, so you want to make sure you show the money supply is perfectly inelastic, vertical. And you want to show two money demand curves, MD1, MD2, shifting to the left, and you want to show a drop in the nominal interest rate. Now, remember, the money market graph has the nominal interest rate on the vertical axis and the quantity of money on the horizontal axis, okay? The next question is, what happens to the price of bonds? Now, this is one of those units where the Khan Academy videos are going to be critical, and there's a lot of them, okay? If you haven't looked at them, let me just jump out of this really quickly. To the bottom, okay. So if you haven't looked at them, don't wait. You've got plenty of time. The quiz isn't due and the assignment isn't due until March the 3rd. So you've got time. So budget out your time, guys, and make sure you watch all these because every one of these. See, that's a lot of them, right? They all pertain to this unit. So the one that's important is that in order for you to really understand the next question, even though it's the answer is very simple, the understanding of why it's happening is not quite so simple. So please watch these videos right here. This one especially, okay? Because what happens is bond prices and nominal interest rates move in opposite directions. So when they're asking you what happens to the prices of the previously issued bonds, well, if the interest rates are going to go down, then the price of bonds are going to go up. Okay, but I really want you to read in your book and watch those videos to get a good understanding of why that happens. I don't have time to do it here. It would take the whole time to explain that. Okay, but Khan does a really, really good job. Okay, so if the nominal interest rate is lower, borrowing money for investment is less expensive. So investment will increase. And as we know, I'm not sure I have it here to see easily, but as you should know, be very sure about by now, that investment is part of the aggregate demand function. So if investment goes up, aggregate demand is going to increase, okay, which is going to increase both real GDP and price level. You know, if you just picture, I probably have it here somewhere. If I can find it. No, sorry, here. It's here. So, you know, if you just picture the aggregate demand curve shifting out, it's going to mean price levels go up and real GDP goes up. So that's what's going to happen there. Also, what's going to happen is if nominal interest rate is lower, people are going to consume more with their credit cards. They're going to buy more things where they have to pay interest, because now the interest isn't as high. So that also is going to increase aggregate demand, shift it to the right. So price level and real GDP both increase. Also, if the nominal interest rate is lower, this will disincentivize. This will make foreign investors not want to invest in America because they're looking for a high return on their investment. So as the interest rates drop, they take their money out of the country. There's a capital outflow, which means net exports go up. We know that capital outflows and net exports move in the same direction. Capital inflow and imports move in the same direction. Net exports goes down as inflow goes up. Net export goes up as outflow goes up. So if net exports go up, that's going to also mean, because it's part of the aggregate demand function. So that means that aggregate demand is going to increase along with price level and real GDP. So those are the three answers there. Okay, why that would happen, and that's answering what would happen to the price level and real income. Okay, which is a long answer to a short question. Okay, now let's assume now that the money supply is constant. Now, when we say the money supply is constant, what we're saying is that this curve right here doesn't go anywhere. This is the money supply right here. So if it's a constant, we're saying it's not going to shift at all. Okay, it's stuck right there. Okay, constant. Money supply is constant. Based on your answer in B2, will the velocity of money increase, decrease, remain the same, or you don't know? Okay, well, in order to answer that, you need to go in your chapter 13 or whatever it is I can't remember. You're reading the chapter you're in right now, and find out that money velocity is nominal GDP divided by money supply, right? So we know that the money supply state is constant, but if aggregate demand shifts to the right, both price level and real GDP go up. So nominal GDP, because this has to do with the dollar amount of GDP, will go up. So if the numerator goes up and the denominator doesn't go anywhere at all, stays where it is, then the money velocity is going to increase, right? Simple math, right? Okay. If the central bank wishes to reverse the change, so what was the change? The change was that interest rates went down. So if the central bank wants to reverse that and get interest rates to go back up, they control the money supply. The Federal Reserve is a U.S. central bank, and they control the money supply. So what they're going to want to do to get that interest rate to go back up is to shift the money supply curve to the left, right? Because we've shifted our money demand to here. So in order to get from here back up to here, we want to shift this curve, the money supply curve, to the left. So we want to take money out of the money supply. And they do that by selling bonds in the open market. And when they sell the bond, they get money that pulls money out of the money supply, okay? So the central bank, or in the case of the U.S., the Federal Reserve, would want to decrease the money supply, shift the money supply curve to the left. So it would sell bonds on the open market to take money out of the money supply, and that would shift it to the left, which would increase. We would move from here up to here. So that would bring the interest rates back up, okay? And that is all of problem one. Does anybody have any questions? Problem one? You guys good? Okay. Switching gears now. I know last assignment, they were all three very similar. This is just the opposite. They're all three different, which I think is much more interesting. Okay, problem two. The Federal Reserve can influence the supply of money, and when you read your book and watch the videos, you'll know that they do it by buying and selling bonds. That the main way they do it is by buying and selling bonds on the open market, okay? So assume they want to target a lower federal funds rate, so they want the interest rate to drop. What open market operation can the Federal Reserve use to achieve a lower target? Well, we just looked at what they would do to get it to go up, right? So it stands to a reason if they increase the money supply, it's going to get it to go down, right? So that's your answer. So your answer would be, whoops, sorry about that. Whoops, come back here, okay. Your answer would be the central bank would want to increase the money supply, so it would buy bonds. It would buy bonds, so when they would buy them, they would be putting money into the money supply. This would shift the vertical money supply curve to the right, which would mean interest rates dropped, right? And they're also asking you once again about the prices of bonds, I believe. Yep. They're asking you what would happen to the price of bonds, and you know the simple, short, easy answer is if the interest rates go down, the price of bonds go up. But once again, learn why. Watch this. It's interesting. Learn why, okay? Where was I? Okay. So that's that, right? Now, the next thing they want you to know is using a correctly, or want you to do, is they want you to draw a graph of the money market, show the effect of the open market operation, which I did that, right? I just I showed you that, I believe, right here. This guy right here. Okay, because you want to show the money supply shifting to the right, which means your nominal interest rate drops and the quantity of money is going to increase. So you can put that guy right there, right? That should be M1, M2, what I'm doing here. Let me make that right. I want to make this up. That should be M1, and this should be M2. Yeah, let me fix that just so it's not too confusing. There we go. So you got that going on. If I could get that guy to work. Okay. Okay. Now, the next question is how will this affect the required reserves? Well, when you read about it, required reserves are just a percentage that the Federal Reserve or the central bank requires that banks keep in reserve. That's an arbitrary percentage they set. So changing the money supply, buying and selling bonds doesn't affect the required reserves at all. So that wouldn't have anything to do with it, okay? So you would just say they would remain the same. The real answer, I guess, would be what I have right here, is that it does not affect the required reserves. And the next problem we do, problem 3, is going to get in more detail about what these required reserves are all about. And then it's just asking you a straightforward question. Just see if you know it or not. Another action the Federal Reserve can take is just to simply change the discount interest rate. And what is it, right? What is that? And all that is the rate. The Federal Reserve has what they call a discount window. That's what they call it. That's where banks can go as a last resort and borrow money if they need to borrow enough money to have the required amount in reserves. And typically what banks do is they borrow this, whatever they have to have, and this can be done daily because their deposits are coming in and going out, loans are coming in and going out daily. So every day they may or may not need to borrow in a certain amount short term to make sure they always have the required amount of reserves. And they usually borrow it from another bank, but if they can't, they can always go to the Federal Reserve's discount window, and the rate of interest they have to pay on the money they borrow from the Federal Reserve is called the discount rate, and it's usually low. It's usually lower than normal interest rates, okay? So does anybody have any questions on problem 2? No? I take the silence as you're good? Okay. Problem 3. Moving on. We are given a very simple balance sheet of the Mi-Tierra Bank. And remember, when you read about this, you're going to learn, if you haven't learned it, or you probably haven't since it's only a Tuesday, but you'll learn that it's called a balance sheet. And the reason it's called a balance sheet is because it has to balance. The assets, whatever's over here, has to equal whatever is over here, okay? So 85 plus 5 plus 10 has to equal 100, or else it's not balanced. So whatever you have in assets, which are your required reserves, which is required, whatever you have in reserves that are over the required amount, whatever your loans are. Now, the reason these are called assets is because loans are what borrowers owe the bank, and reserves are money you actually have in the bank. The reason these are called liabilities is because you're liable, because the deposits are the bank customers' money, and they can come and take their money out anytime they want. So you're always liable for whatever amount you have in deposits to be able to pay out to your customers at any time, okay? So that's the simple balance sheet, okay, or a bank balance. It's called a T chart or a T table. I think it's actually called a T table because it's like a T, whatever. What is the reserve requirement? And what they're asking here, they're not asking, I don't really like the question. It's a little bit vague. But you're supposed to know that the reserve requirement is a percentage of whatever your liabilities are, or your actually whatever your total assets are. It's whatever either one of these are, because they have to be equal, right? So it's a percentage of. It's easier probably to just look over here since there's only one number. So all they're really asking you, since this is the required, what percentage is 10,000 of 100,000? Because this is the required, so you know that whatever this is, that's the required percentage. So you simply just say that the reserve requirement is 10% because 10,000 divided by 100,000 is the percentage, which is 0.1 or 10%, okay? Now what's going to happen? Lewis, who's a customer at the Mi-Tierra Bank, is going to withdraw $5,000 in cash from his checking his checking account, and that's going to come out of this number right here, which is demand deposits. By how much will Metier's reserves change based on Lewis's withdrawal? Okay. Well, actually, I just said that wrong. It's not going to come out of here. It's going to come out of here. It's going to come out of the excess reserves right here. So this 5,000 is going to come out of right there. Okay. So I just said that wrong. Sorry about that. So if Lewis withdraws, 5,000, his total reserves will decrease by 5,000. So the question that they actually asked you was, well, let me make sure. Yeah. So the reserves will change by 5,000. Okay. Because that's going to, once again, come out of their reserves right there. Okay. So that's going to go down to 0. So, and then, okay, then the next question is, what is the initial effect of the withdrawal on M1 measure of money? Now, you're going to learn by watching the videos, and also you're reading in the text what M1, M2 money is. And just to know, M1 money is a type or a category of money that includes both cash and demand deposits. So when Lewis withdrew his 5,000, it actually just changed demand deposits from demand deposits to cash, because he took this out of the bank's deposits. So it's a little bit confusing. It came out of here, but it also uses up a reserve. So it does both, actually, but that's not really that important. The important thing is to know that M1 is both cash and a demand deposit. So that doesn't, so just changing it from demand deposit to cash does not change the amount of M1 money at all. So that does not change. Now, the only sort of tricky part is right here. Okay, so I want to make sure we understand how this happens. So the next question is, as a result, I'm in part B3 right here. As a result of the withdrawal, what is the new value of excess reserves on the balance sheet of Metiera? So I just wanted to make sure I was recording. I couldn't remember if I started or not. Okay, so what is the change in excess reserves? Now, your quick answer could just be, well, it's 0, right? Because they took all 5,000 out, but that would be wrong. Why? Because you actually have to take the 5,000 out of here. So what happens is, because he took out 5,000. Now they're not liable for it anymore, right? It's not part of their liabilities because he has it, because Lewis has it. So now their total liabilities goes down to 95. Actually, yeah, 95,000, because they're not liable for that 5,000 anymore, because once again, it's in Lewis's pocket. So their total liabilities decreases down to 95,000. Now, here's why it's important that the required reserves is a percentage, not just a dollar amount, because it's still 10%, but 10% now of 95,000 instead of 100. So that means that the required reserves now drops down to 9,500, right? So you've got an extra 500. Now this is a 0, what was here, because Lewis has it, but you only have a required reserve dollar amount of 9,500, because 9,500 is 10% of 95,000. So you've got 500 less required here to meet that 10% requirement, which gives you an extra 500 to put into your excess right there. Okay, so that's what happens. So the required reserve amount decreases from 9,500. 10,000 minus 9,500 equals 500. So the bank's excess reserves are now 500. Does everybody understand what I just did? That's important. Okay. There was also a video, by the way, where he actually goes over the most recent free response question from 2017, I think. Right. Where is it? Here somewhere. I'm going to find it. Let's see. Let's see. Where is it? Tell me if you see it. I know it's here. Man. Let's see. I'm sorry about this, guys. I know it's here. I put it in there when function, comment, lesson summary, balance sheet, money creation. Here it is, right there. Woo! Right there. So he actually goes over another one, very similar. So you've got two now, right? I did the one I think from 2012, I believe, and he did the one that's a little bit more recent, but they're very similar. So you can watch this and go over it again, because there's a good chance that's going to be on there. So you need to know how to figure that out, okay? So that's that, right? So now we have to answer part C, and we're done. Assume that the next day John withdraws from the bank an amount that exceeds, that goes over the bank's excess reserves. Assuming that no loans are called in, how can Amitera Bank cover its required reserves? Well, we talked about that earlier. They're going to need to borrow it from either the Federal Reserve discount window, or they will most likely borrow it from another bank. Okay, so they would have to borrow it. So if more than 500 here is drawn out, is withdrawn, if somebody comes in and withdraws, over 500, then they're going to need to borrow enough money to make sure they always have. But see, think about it though. This is also interesting. What they're asking here is when money is withdrawn. This is sort of a weird question, because if you think about what we just worked through, when money is withdrawn from here, it means that this number right here gets lower, which means the required reserves gets lower. So you'd have to look at all the numbers, because as the required reserves goes lower, because you're only required to have 10% of whatever's over here, right? So it's one of those fluid things. But the short answer is, if they don't have enough to meet their required reserves, then they would have to borrow it. Okay? And that's it. That's all I have. Does anybody have any questions? Okay, so guys, before you go, let me just show you again real quick the calendar. And I want to mark, I've already marked everyone here. Okay. And I'll make sure I go back. And I'm going to go back, by the way, and check all your quizzes. And since you're here, thank you so much for coming in. Your reward is going to be, if you've got any points counted off on the free response for the quiz, I will give you those points back, since I was able to go over it and you should understand it. And I appreciate you, taking your time to attend our class. And I wanted to show you, if I could find it, the calendar, just to give you a heads up, so we're all, while the recording is still going. So we are in February. We're right here. And we're not, and this is your discussion 7 is due Sunday the 24th. So you got plenty of time to get that done. And then quiz 9 is, and assignment 9 isn't due until March 3rd. So I'm probably going to have the session for the quiz 9 study guide this week right here. Okay. Probably a Tuesday right there. So you're going to have a break, but don't forget, don't forget about the class and take time to review your quizzes. Okay. As often as you can do it. If I was you guys, I would be looking at a few quiz questions every day and making sure that you really can draw those graphs, because when I make up your quizzes, I get those questions from prior AP exams, and I always make sure I can answer it before I look at the answer. And I get most of them right, most of them. But the way I get them right is I look at the graph every time. I need to look at the graph, whatever it's talking about, in order to make sure I understand if prices are going up, is interest rates are going up, is this going down? The graph helps me. So the more you draw these graphs, and the more familiar you are with all the graphs that we've looked at, the easier both the free response and the multiple choice are going to be. Okay? So that's my encouragement to you guys. Okay? And that's all I have. So thanks for coming, guys.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. All right. Have a great break, and hopefully it won't be too cold. All right. All right. Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye.